Hey guys, I'm just stalling for a minute or so till everyone logs on. And if you wouldn't mind just letting me know if you can hear me, that would be great. Can you hear me? See if that works. Oh, awesome. Oh, some people are saying no. A lot of people are saying yes and no. So my mic shows that I'm on. So you should be able to hear me. And worst case scenario, if you can't hear me, what I will do is this is pre-recorded. So not pre-recorded, but it's recorded. So we'll upload it and you could watch it tomorrow. Okay, I think we're good. Good. I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes. I'm just playing around with these buttons here as people logging on. We have about 2,500 attendees today. And for some reason, I saw this new button. It says request. So I'm going to upload. It says invite as a speaker. So I'm just going to press it and see if I can invite some of my attendees as speakers. So if you get an invitation, we'll see what happens. Maybe I could pop you in and we can talk to you. We'll see if that works. Okay, we'll just give it about 30 more seconds. All right. Oh, cool. That worked. Judy.
Yes.
Hey, Judy.
Hi.
I just pulled you right into my webinar here. So maybe you could help me. You can ask any questions as we go through this, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Sometimes it's a little difficult to do a seminar by yourself because you can't see anyone, but at least I see one person. So there's some other people here too that I'm going to invite in. All right. Okay, so welcome to the webinar, everyone. We're going to get started. This is a very vital webinar. It's on fat burning and exactly how fat burning works. So you might want to take some notes. You're going to have a lot of questions. I will be more than happy to answer the questions that you have as we go, but I'm trying to make them brief. It looks like Judy, could you mute your microphone for a little bit until I pop you in? Cool. Okay. So everyone's able to do, you might be, because there's so many people, I don't know if it's going to affect the pausing or not, but let's get started. So a lot of you got my emails on my recent webinar on ketosis, and I really want to cover that in depth. It's a little bit complex, but I'm going to make it as simple as possible. Then I'll answer any questions that you have. I've been doing ketosis for quite a while, and I use it on clients that have tried everything and nothing's worked because a lot of people are carb sensitive, and I want to get into the difference between paleo and ketosis. So there's some big differences, and I also want to get into what do you eat long term. And but I think the biggest thing that comes up as a problem is that it's a red flag. Are fats, eating fats, okay to eat? Are they dangerous to eat? I want to cover that as well. I think the worst recommendation that we've ever heard was the concept of everything in moderation, because it allows everything in moderation of balance, which you'll never get into fat burning if you do that. So that is the worst advice to tell someone, have a balanced diet, because that doesn't work. Now, some of the anti-ketosis practitioners out there, almost every single one of them have never practiced before an actual clinical setting. They might do research on rats, but they don't actually practice. So when you work with actual people over and over and over years and years, you will find that the whole calorie in, calorie out model does not work. Eating less calories than you're burning does not work. So you have to think outside the box. I am totally convinced that the majority of information being put out by conventional means is the exact opposite of what you want to do. And I can prove that. And it just happens over and over and over. So I'm going to pull up some slides, see if I could do a screen share here. Okay, hopefully I can do my screen share. I have all these slides. Don't tell me that I can't pull my... Well, that's not good. Okay, hang in there for a second. Let's see if I can do my screen share. Why isn't that working? I have all these great slides that I want to cover. Okay, well, we're just going to keep going here. I'm going to have to just describe some of these slides. But the first question I want to talk about is ketosis safe? Is it healthy? I really think it's one of the healthiest things that you can do. There's some serious research being done or has been done on ketosis for all sorts of things. Probably the biggest thing is for brain and neural protection of your brain, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, seizures, things like that. So the brain loves this type of fuel called ketones, which we'll get into describing what that is. But the state of ketosis is very good for any type of blood sugar issues: diabetes, heart-related issues, neurological, cancer. And the reason why it's good for cancer is because the cancer cell lives on sugar. PET scans basically scan the body for certain parts of your body that are eating up a lot of sugar. So the cancer cell loves sugar, and if I had cancer, I would completely and utterly eliminate all my sugars, and I would have a much better chance of surviving. Respiratory issues, asthma, allergies, acne, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and especially weight loss. So those are some of the health benefits. I'm going to probably send everyone access to the slides so you can get all the slides, because I have research studies if you want to look at, especially ones on cardiovascular, that basically state that when you consume dietary saturated fats, it does not in any way, shape, or form increase risk of cardiovascular accidents or heart attacks. So that's pretty powerful stuff, because that goes exactly against what we've been brainwashed to think. It's very good for cognitive function and brain function. And I'll have to kind of describe some of these images that we're talking about. So when we're dealing with excess stubborn fat, we're dealing with a problem of stuck energy in the fat cell. That is the biggest problem that we have. And so I want to move beyond the conventional viewpoint that all you have to do is balance your calories and eat less than you're burning, and you lose weight. That's absolutely not true. Maybe if you're 18 years old, but when you get 20, 30, 40, it doesn't work anymore. So there's really two fuel sources. You have the sugar fuel and we have the fat fuel. Fat fuel, really, you can only tap into that when you're in ketosis. Ketosis is a condition that the body is burning fat, and it's actually using ketones as a byproduct of fat burning. So ketones are a fuel source that's very similar in function to glucose, but it's a much cleaner fuel. It has 3 times as much energy as glucose. And the problem with running on glucose or sugar is that you get high blood sugar and you get low blood sugar. The total amount of sugar in your blood is basically 2 teaspoons. That's it. So if you ever get your blood tested and they say you have diabetes, whatever, or that you don't have diabetes, so we're going to look at these numbers. If you're higher than 100, it's hyperglycemia or diabetes. If it's lower than 100, it's hypoglycemia. So you want to be 100. And what that 100 means is 2 teaspoons of sugar in your blood at any one time. As you do ketosis, the blood sugars will come down a little bit, but it won't create a hypoglycemic state. But a lot of people oscillate from high sugars to low sugars all day long. So can anyone tell me what are some of the symptoms of high blood sugar? Can you tell me? Great. And what that 100 means is 2 teaspoons of sugar in. Wow, I just clicked on a button that someone sent me. I shouldn't have done that. Can anyone tell me, just go ahead and type in, what symptoms do you get when you get high sugar in your blood? Okay, very good. You get brain fog. You get tired, blurred vision. You get thirsty. That's right, cold sweats. Very good. So those are some of the symptoms with hyperglycemia. So basically, thirsty, need to urinate often, dry skin, hungry, blurred vision, fatigue, brain fog, okay? That's with high sugar, all right? Now, what are the symptoms with low blood sugar? Does anyone know? It's called hypoglycemia. Very good. That's right. Shaky, sweating, dizziness, anxiety, irritability, psychosis, craving for sugar, vision problems, weak. So they really affect your cognitive function. So anytime that sugar goes high or low, it just messes with your physical and mental capacities. And so that's why running on ketosis is very therapeutic for your mood, for your sense of calmness, for your overall stress, because the brain is very greedy. It basically sucks up, it's only 2% of your whole body, but it sucks up 20% of the energy. So it's constantly wanting that sugar. So you'll probably hear from some people that the brain only runs on sugar. Well, it only runs on sugar until you don't give it sugar, okay? And then it can switch to ketosis. So what happens is that your body will not feed the brain ketones unless there's no sugar in the bloodstream. Okay, so it does convert. Now here's the thing. You have a storage of sugar, and your sugar is mainly stored in the liver and the muscles. So let's talk about the muscles first. The muscle has the stored sugar, but it only is used for the muscles. The muscle will not give up any of its stored sugar to the rest of the body. It will keep it self-contained. So you really can't use the stored sugar for your muscles at all. It's there to feed your muscles as a sole purpose. So now we're left with the liver. So the liver is storing about 7 tablespoons of sugar, enough to last for about 72 hours. Okay, if you ate nothing or no sugar, you would be dead in 72 hours unless there was a backup fuel system. Okay, and that's your fat. So one thing that's cool about this eating plan is that it really fixes a lot of symptoms that people have with their cognitive function, with memory, with their mood, with anxiety. Because when those sugars come up and down, and you're craving and you're hungry, oh my gosh, that is not the way to live. In fact, there's even a stage 3, type 3 diabetes, which affects the brain or memory. Okay, so here's the thing. I better just kind of define what I mean by diabetes. There's 2 types. Type 1 is where you don't have enough insulin from that pancreas, and so the sugar goes higher and higher, because the purpose of insulin is to control sugars by lowering sugars, storing in the fat. But type 2 is that the insulin is being produced, but it's not being received into the receptors, into the liver. So it's not being listened to. So it's another problem with storage of sugar. I'm sorry, insulin. So then what happens is the sugars go high because the insulin's there, but it's not available to the cells. Okay? So they're both a similar problem, but one's more advanced. I'm getting some interesting comments here that people feel great and then lose a lot of weight when they're in ketosis. Okay, that's awesome. So again, I will send all of you these slides, okay? I will just send those because I have your emails. So here's the thing. Unless, you know, you don't have any stored sugar for over 72 hours, unless you have a good amount of fat reserves and you know how to do this, you won't be able to tap into fat. So here's the big question, and I want to see if you guys can get this right. Does anyone know what the purpose of fat is? Can anyone tell me? I want to see if anyone can get it correct. This is a key question. Let's see if anyone knows the purpose of fat. And Judy, why don't you put on your mic? I can see your top of your head, Judy. What's the purpose of fat over there?
To protect yourself.
Very close. It's definitely to protect something. But a lot of people say it's like a cushion or an insulator and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's not the primary purpose. But thank you for answering that. So if you can put your thing back on mute, and I'll come back to you in a second. All right, so thank you. Energy storage, energy is protective, fuel, energy. Wow, when you're doing a seminar this big, you have a lot of answers that scroll pretty fast. Very good. Storage of energy. Okay, so I have not seen one person get this correct. No. Yeah, and this leads me to my point. The biggest misunderstood word or subject is basically what the purpose of fat is. Here's the primary purpose of fat. You guys ready for this? I don't think you're quite ready. Maybe we'll have to do this next month, Judy. What do you think? No, I'm just kidding. We're going to do it. I'm just playing with you. Okay, this is the purpose of fat. It's a survival gland that protects against the starvation of what? Does anyone know? Sugar. Let me say that again. Fat's primary purpose is to protect against the starvation of sugar. It protects you against sugar starvation. What does that mean? That means that fat is a backup organ to sugar. Okay? So it backs up storage. It's a backup to sugar. So it's really, because you wouldn't last for more than 72 hours, or especially your brain, your body is it gains fat in case it needs to do that. So what does this tell us? How does this relate to what we have to do to get this fat off our bodies? Well, it means that you have to starve your body of sugar. So most of you already have done this. Some of you are trying to do this. A lot of people have questions. So basically, the most important thing to know is that it's a backup organ to sugar. So now, knowing this data will now tell you what diet would be best to be on, right? And if we look at this compared to the conventional reduce your calories and exercise more, well, yeah, you're going to reduce your calories, but according to the government, you're still going to consume 65% of your calories of carbohydrates. You will never tap into your fat. Weight Watchers, a lot of Slim Fast, you're never going to burn fat. Now, because you're lowering calories, you might lose water weight, but I'll guarantee you're not going to lose much fat. So here's the most important thing. We must starve the body of sugar. Okay, so that's the bad news. The good news is we can replace it with more healthy fats, which is going to be very satisfying to your body. So we'll get into exactly what that means in a bit. But we must bring down the carbohydrates to about 5% of our overall calories, which comes out to about no more than 50 grams of net carbohydrates. Okay, now, hey Judy, can you pop your mic back on? Okay, good. Judy, tell me, do you know what a net carbohydrate is?
Not really. I don't.
Okay, it's very, very simple. You basically look on the back of the label and you get the total carbohydrates and you minus the fiber carbohydrates. I'm sorry, the fiber. Okay, so you minus that. All right. So thank you for answering me there. You can put it back on mute. So yeah, we just take the total carbohydrates and we minus the dietary fiber. So I want to just, I wish you could see the slide, but I'll send it to you. I want to take broccoli, for example. Broccoli has about 10 grams of carbohydrate, okay? But it has 3.8 grams of fiber. So if you minus those two, you end up with 6.2 grams of carbohydrate. Not that much. So you're not going to have any problems with eating broccoli, I'll tell you that right now. Let's take an apple. An apple has 25 grams of sugar, and it has 4.4 grams of fiber. So that means it's 20.6 grams of carbohydrate. So really, you could only get away with, if you only ate like that as your carbohydrate, you're only going to get away with maybe 2.5 apples a day. So a lot of people, because they eat other things, and there's a little bit of carbohydrate and cheese and nuts and things like that, the apples are going to blow them way out of ketosis. And I know I recommend apples in my book. So again, I am very willing to change my ideas when I test out new theories. So I'm not recommending apples anymore, especially if you're trying to lose weight. Maybe if you're maintaining weight, you can definitely have them. But one thing I want to talk about apples is that it has just a tiny bit of fiber. So that means that 19 grams of the total 25 grams are completely sugar. It's a lot of sugar. It's a tremendous amount of sugar. Now let's get to celery. All right, check how many carbohydrates are in celery. 1.2 grams. And there's 0.6 grams of fiber. So we're left with 0.6 grams of total carbohydrates, net carbohydrates. That's like 0.5 gram of carbohydrate. So in other words, you can eat a lot of celery and you don't have to worry about anything. There's actually no dietary sugar in celery. Okay. So, all right, good. Well, you guys are responsive. You have a lot of good comments here. I'll get to those. Hang in there. Obviously, there's, sour apples and there's sweet apples, but I think I didn't check on the amount of sugar in the sour apples. but I'm sure it's not that low compared to what we're going with this. Okay, so here's the thing. We must starve the body of sugar. Now, that's a constant, so we're going to keep our carbs very low. The next topic we're going to talk about is protein. So protein is needed for the raw material for ligaments, muscles, tendons, enzymes, hormones, bones, cholesterol transportation, like good and bad cholesterol, like you have high density lipoproteins. It's basically cholesterol as a protein shuttle that moves it around. Okay, so the problem with protein is we need some, but we don't want too much. And the reason for that is that too much can trigger insulin. Yeah, that's the problem, because we don't shed off that much protein each day. So protein is used mainly for structural type things to replace the damaged parts. And I know people that when they try to beef up and want to get bigger at the gym, they eat more protein. What's going to happen, they're going to strain their livers and their kidneys. So it's not a good advice. So we want to adjust the protein to the person, to their size and their adrenal health, because the adrenal puts a person in a called a catabolic state. It breaks down protein a lot faster, especially in the quadricep muscles in your legs and your gluteus maximus, which is your butt muscle. So both of those muscles can break down if you have a lot of adrenal stress, and so you need a little bit more protein. But overall, we're not doing a lot of protein. I would say anywhere between 3 to 6 ounces of protein per meal is perfect. Now, when you talk about the Atkins diet, they're talking about doing a lot more protein. We're not talking about ketosis is not a lot of protein. It's a moderate amount of protein. So we're going to keep that as a constant. So we keep our carbs down and our proteins at a constant. So now what's the last variable? You got it, fat. Now, I know we've been taught that if you eat fat, you get fat, it's very bad, blah, 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 blah. Let me just give you some data on what fat really will do when you consume the right amount. The first thing that it won't do is it will not raise your insulin, because fat is neutral with insulin. So that's one thing. Second thing is that when you start consuming the right type of fats, you're going to need that to satisfy the brain for the fat soluble vitamins that most vegetarians and other people are deficient in. See, when you eat your vegetables, even kale, people say, well, I eat spinach and I have kale has loaded with vitamin A. That's true, but it's a precursor to vitamin A. It's not the active form. You need animal fats to get the active available form of the fat soluble vitamins, like vitamin A. Where do you get vitamin A? In butter, grass-fed butter. Kerrygold butter is the best. Carrots provide the precursor that convert into the active form, but you really, if your system is good, you only convert about 5% of that. So you'd have to eat a lot of vegetables to get your fat soluble vitamins. And so people that are eating a lot of vegetables and hardly any fat, they dry out. The skin dries out. So we need those fat soluble vitamins. One thing to help you when you eat vegetables to get more fat soluble vitamins out of that vegetable is to consume fat with your vegetables, like butter. Very smart thing to do. So the goal of ketosis goes beyond just weight loss, but here's what we want to do when you get on the ketosis. We want you to not just burn the fat that you're eating, which you will, but we want you to tap into your reserves. And that is the only way you're going to do it, is if you cut the carbs down. Okay, now you will have to adjust the amount of fats to your activity level. And there is something of, certain people burn more calories than others, and some people are going to need a little bit more fat. If you're sedentary and you have a very poor metabolism, you might not be able to have the amount of fats of someone that like 18, but you can definitely have some to satisfy your body and run the machine a lot better. So that's another variable that we have to adjust as we go through this. Why do we need fat to burn fat? That's an interesting question. Because first of all, the body considers fat as a last store ditch effort of survival. And so if you cut the fat away, your body will start holding on to fat more dearly. So when we start putting that fat back, it will feel a lot safer to be able to let some of it go, because again, it's a survival mechanism. If you have no dietary fats, you starve the body of not only the ketones, but the structural types of fats that you need to surround all the cells of your body, to surround the nerve endings, because all your nerves are surrounded with myelin sheath, that's fat, and your brain is mostly fat. So you actually starve some of the structural fats, and you end up having a lot of health problems with the immune system. I think it was Pritikin. He had a lot of health problems. I think he committed suicide. I think it probably affected his whole mood when you cut your fats way down. So it's very dangerous to have a very low-fat diet. It's much healthier to have the healthy fats. I've been doing fats forever, and I consume a tremendous amount of fats. If you do a low-carb, low-fat, and high-protein diet, you will then spike that insulin, because high protein stimulates insulin and stresses the kidney and liver. And so the person will start feeling more bloated. They'll get back pain a little bit higher up. That's the stress on the kidney. Okay? If you do a low carb, low fat, low protein, there's not enough fats to stimulate the ketosis. And so your body, because of the low protein, low fat, will have a tendency to go after structural proteins of your body. So it starts to break down more protein. So really, the ideal, when you look at it from all different sides, the ideal situation is to have about 5% of the total calories being carbohydrate, 20 to 25% being protein, and the rest being fat. And then you just have to adjust the quantities. So really, eating fat keeps the body out of stress, so you don't have those danger signals. In fact, think about what sugar metabolism is. Eating sugar puts your body in a state of flight or fight mode all the time, because it's a sudden burst of quick energy that keeps dropping your blood sugars up and down, up and down. That's stress, because it's going to activate cortisol. That's that stress hormone. Okay, so where do you get your vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, K2? Well, you get the vitamin A from the grass-fed butter. You also will get it from the cod liver oil. Vitamin D from the sun, cod liver oil again, fish oils, grass-fed butter, and egg yolks are loaded with vitamin D. Vitamin E you can get from butter again, but you can also get it from nuts and seeds and certain oils. Now, the other one I want to talk about is vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 is one of the most important vitamins for a lot of health problems, specifically making your arteries elastic. So it's really good for blood pressure. It's good to clean out the calcium buildup in your arteries and your joints. And that's in grass-fed beef, butter, and cheese. So you want that grass-fed cow. Very important. I mean, it's kind of a recently discovered vitamin, but it makes sense now that putting your body in ketosis would naturally have you gravitate to more of these fatty foods that have the vitamins that you've been missing this whole time. So I always ask people that are vegetarians, I says, where do you get your vitamin K2? Now, you could get it from a vegetarian source. It's called NATO. But where do you get all your vitamin A? And where do you get your other fat-soluble vitamins? So it's just something to consider. So it's very difficult to get in ketosis if you're a vegetarian. I have nothing against trying to do that, but most vegetarians are grainitarians. They do the grains and the breads and the pastas. Okay, so now, what types of fats are healthy? That is the question. Well, there's the type of fats that are low stress to the liver and don't stress the gallbladder are the medium chain fats, medium chain triglycerides. Now, what does that mean? That means that those fats that you would consume, like grass-fed butter, that's a medium chain triglyceride. Coconut butter is it's called MCT, medium chain triglyceride. Olive oil is good. Grass-fed cheese, pasture-raised eggs, where chickens go out there and can go and eat grass. Grass-fed beef, pasture-raised chickens, those are the ones that you're going to have to eat. Believe it or not, grass-fed beef has a really good type of fat. It's called a monounsaturated fat that's bypasses your liver, and it's used just for energy. I feel really good when I do that, but you don't want to consume the lean beef. You want to have the fattier beef. You don't want to have the chicken with the skin off. You want that skin. It's exactly opposite of what we've been taught. Okay, so ketones provide 3 times as much energy. So you'll find that your brain just has more energy. You actually need a little bit less sleep if you do this. And it's very stable in your blood sugar, so you don't get so moody. So many people have anxiety. It's just their blood sugars, especially if they're waking up in the middle of the night having anxiety. But ketones are only made, and I'm not talking about diabetes, okay? But ketones, called nutritional ketosis, only occurs when the body is starving of carbohydrates, okay? That's what you have to do. There's some other benefits too that I want to talk about with your gut. A lot of people get swelling in their gut when they have just a little bit of fruit and beans and some other grains. It just tears them up. When they start going more fat, their entire digestive system does wonderful. I'll never forget, I was living on grains, trying to be a vegetarian when I was 28. And then one day, I was in California. I was driving down the street, and I see this huge building. It says the Health House. It's this yellow building. I said, honey, let's go in there. Let's see what they have. Maybe they can help me. So this old-time weightlifter guy that was selling vitamins and things, and he brought me in the back, and he gave me some raw milk, and he said, here, eat this beef, whatever. And that was in the morning, and I ate that, and I felt so amazingly good. So I started having that for breakfast, and I do much, much better, and I cut the cereal out. I used to be the epitome of the junk food junkie. I used to eat the muffins, huge muffins, Life cereal. I would do that. I would live on sugar. But coming back to my point was that your gut can do very well on fats. In fact, the microbes in your gut primarily live on something called butyric acid. And yes, that does come from the breakdown of eating vegetables, but it also comes from butter. That's the main source to feed your microbes. The other source, a smaller source of something that feeds your microbes would be acetic acid, and that is in the apple cider vinegar. So apple cider vinegar is a really good thing. A teaspoon in some water as you drink that with your lemon. Forget the cranberry, okay, but just drink that through the day. That will really help you in shrinking your stomach. Okay, so now I want to talk about beef, for example. Let's say a hamburger without the bun. How much carbohydrate is in that hamburger? 0. Okay. How much fat is in there? 24% of that hamburger is fat. Guess how much protein? 30%. So it's almost half fat and half protein. So when I say you need 60% of your diet fat, I'm talking about a lot of the protein sources that you're eating have a tremendous amount of fat already. So we're not talking about thinking that a piece of meat, for example, is pure fat, pure protein, and you have to eat all this lard. I'm not talking about that. A lot of the proteins that you already eat are loaded with certain percentages of fat. So now there's a study that I'm going to send you. It's called the long-term effects of a ketogenic diet in obese patients. And this is what it says. This is experimental clinical cardiology. It says administration of the ketogenic diet for relatively longer periods of time did not produce any significant side effects in patients, and it's safe to use for longer periods. But you know, they're not going to admit this because who wants to be wrong, right? All right, so I wish I could show you this picture. Let me see if I could do that now. Let's see if that screen share. No, it doesn't work. Okay, that's fine. I have these new keto bombs I want to share with you. It's an amazing recipe. In fact, I will send, see if I could send that right now. Some of you have already clicked on and went to drberg.com, fat burning diets. Let me just see if I can, let's see if I could just send it to you here. Yeah, maybe I could. I think that went to everyone. Let me see if I can. That's my message to everyone. Here we go. To everyone. Okay. I'll paste it in there. Boom. Okay, now everyone should get this link. And you could look at this later, not right now. But if you go in there, and a lot of you already went in there, but I added some new things. I added these new keto bombs that are just amazingly delicious. And I give you the recipe, and you can make them as a base, and you can put all sorts of things in there to make them interesting with nuts, and they're delicious, and they're very, very healthy. It's one of the best treats that you can eat, and I'm going through quite a few of those little guys. Okay, I also have in here kind of a general eating plan that I'm going to recommend for you, but the other thing I want to mention is that, yes, I want to answer the question. Yes, it will be later available on YouTube. Here's the thing that I wanted to mention, that the kale recipe, the kale shake recipe that I've been recommending, I'm changing that recipe. And I'm actually going to put it in a booklet and just get it out there. It'll be on my website. But here's the thing that I wanted to mention about that, is that I'm taking out the fruit, okay, and I'm putting in there something called liquid stevia, okay, berry flavored, with 2 tablespoons of coconut oil, and you blend it up. I swear it tastes just like a kale shake. It's amazing, and you don't really need the berries, and that would be something you can do on a regular basis. So I have a whole week of foods that I'm going to get to you guys, and then I have the new kale shake recipe and how to make it. And there's a couple other things that you need to think about when you do this ketos eating plan. One is that some people are going to have to adapt to ketosis, and that adaptation takes anywhere between 3 days to 2 weeks. But just think about it, could probably take you more than 2 weeks to get into a good state, because your body has to adapt to it. It has to make new enzymes. It has to produce more bile. And if you have any liver or gallbladder issues, you may need to add bile in there. And a lot of you have taken my gallbladder formula, but I want to let you know I changed the formula just recently. So it's the new formula. I added something called pancreatin to the gallbladder formula. So not only does it have the bile for the gallbladder support and the stomach enzymes, but now we have the ultimate pancreatic enzymes, especially lipase. Lipase is the main enzymes to digest lipids or fats. So the reason I put that in there is because I realized that when people take the bile and it breaks down the fat, it doesn't break it all the way down to the smallest level. So they need the lipase to take it all the way down to complete full digestion. So the new gallbladder formula has all 3 main component parts. So it handles all parts of the digestion. So that's a kind of something that a lot of people take when they are doing more fats. The other thing you want to mention, think about when you do this, is that you're going to have to increase your sea salt when you do this, because carbohydrates store so much sugar, and when you actually stop eating them, you dump all the sugar and you dump some of the electrolytes. And if you don't add the sea salt back into the diet, you might get a little dizzy, headachy, lethargy, fatigue, all those symptoms. I also recommend doing a calcium magnesium before bed. Just to, you can get it calcium citrate, magnesium citrate, and just take it before bed, because calcium magnesium is going to be a little bit more important now that if you're doing more fat and no carbs, unless you have too much calcium, which is probably not the case. So we want to look at several things. We want to make sure that the minerals are in there, that we can digest some of these fats. We want to keep the constant low carbohydrate, moderate protein, and higher fats. But now we're going to adjust the fats for your tolerance, for your digestion, and for your weight loss. If you are not active, obviously you're not going to have as many fats as I do. But if you're exercising, you can get away with more fats. But now that your body is getting more in ketosis, you're not going to crave anything anymore. You're not going to be as hungry, so you're not going to have the appetite you had before. So it's going to be much better to do this. And let's say before you go to bed, just take one of those keto snacks and you're good to go. Now, what I want to do, I want to answer some questions. Okay, so someone asked about milk. Well, milk is high in protein, but it has lactose. So you might want to look on the label and see how many net carbohydrates, because I don't think there's a lot of fiber in that milk. So you want to end up with no more than 50 net carbohydrates, okay? So per day. So you might want to do a little calculation on that. Yes, good. What are the optimum numbers for ketosis? As far as what numbers? Like when you test your urine for ketosis? Well, you can get a ketose strip and urinate and see if you're in strong ketosis or not. But don't be discouraged if you don't get into ketosis right away. It might take 2 weeks or 4 weeks. Now, some people get constipation. They might need a little bit of bile support, and that's in the gallbladder formula. That lubricates the colon, and add a little more sea salt to add more fluid and water so you don't dry out. So that should handle those symptoms. Now, if you don't have a gallbladder, you definitely need some support in that area, because where's the bile coming from? It's trickling down your liver. You're going to have to take bile as extract with each meal, because you don't have enough, and you won't be able to pull in the fat soluble vitamins that you need. You end up with dry skin. Okay, someone asked about alcohol. Alcohol is out. You can't do alcohol. I'm sorry, because it's gonna bump you out of ketosis for probably a good week. If you're willing to do that, you can do it. Now, there is someone asked about kefir. There is a type of kefir that you can use that is non-lactate. So that's like no sugar. Lactate is milk sugar. So I think you can get away with that. One of the great the ingredients in this keto bomb is cream cheese, organic cream cheese. Oh my gosh, it makes the cookies so amazing. Eggs, that depends on your size. I do 4 eggs and cheese in the morning every single morning. My wife can't do more than 2 eggs. She can't do it. So it really depends on how big you are and your appetite. Turkey bacon, I don't recommend it because it's too lean. You actually need a good source of, bacon that has no nitrates and hormone-free. That's what I'm going to recommend, unless you want the turkey bacon just for your protein. All right. So there's a lot of questions coming in here. If you're pregnant and nursing, that's something I'm not going to recommend online here, because I don't want to take responsibility. I think what I would do is I would check with your doctor and see if it's okay. But just make sure that, see, if you take an infant, breast milk is the ultimate ketose diet. because you're getting all these fats. An infant uses ketones in a developing brain. That's what they use. Diet soda, well, it's better than sugar, but it's not the greatest. What I do is I take Pellegrino. Let's see, this stuff right here, Pellegrino. I go through these, tons of them, and I put about 5 drops of flavored root beer or cola stevia, and it tastes like a soda. I love it. Okay, so Pam asked, can I skip a meal if I'm not hungry? Absolutely. See, this is the thing. You're going to find that your appetite's going to go down. You're not going to be as hungry. Then don't eat. You don't need to. I mean, you don't. It's not going to actually help you, and you'll do fine because you're actually eating denser calorie foods, and you're going to have enough nutrients, and you can tap into more fat if you do that. Someone asked about avocados. Wonderful, wonderful fat. I love it. Someone asked about xylitol. That's my sugar that I have. Xylitol is a great birch bark type of sweetener. It's way better than the other ones. Some of the vegetarian chocolate chips use maltitol. Don't buy them with maltitol. You can do with mannitol if you want. I like the stevia. But maltitol, I don't recommend it. I don't recommend honey either. Okay? Coffee. If you have a small amount of coffee with xylitol, not any more of that, it's not going to be a big problem. Kidney disease. If you have kidney disease, that's another. I'm not going to answer that online because someone's going to say, "Oh yeah, Dr. Berg, that's something like a one-on-one question." But I will say that people with kidney disease do not do a lot of protein, but they do really well on some fats. They do very well. In fact, I would love to do a research project for go down to the local dialysis unit and just put everyone on the right eating plan. I bet you would see incredible things, but they're not going to let me do that. Okay, so what about the adrenal? Someone's asking about the adrenal. It's a really good program for the adrenal, but you just have to have a little bit more protein. Okay, more protein. The problem with some people, if they're have severe blood sugar issues, severe hypoglycemic, they might have the transition phase that's a little bit too more gradual. So you may have to add maybe some fruit into that mix for a little bit. So out of all the, oh, you might want to mute your mic, Judy. Out of all the sweet things, okay, like there's levels of damaging sweet foods. If we have like potatoes and things like that versus fruit, fruit is much, much better, even though it's sweet. And the reason for that, the fructose has a different pathway than starches. And fructose does not necessarily spike insulin. It does create fat in the liver, but it doesn't jack up the insulin as much as some of these starches. So if someone was a diabetic and they had low blood sugar, don't take the glucose tablets, take some fruit. Not orange juice, but actual fruit. Does the diet affect hypothyroidism and adrenal fatigue? It probably would improve both conditions, but hypothyroid is usually coming secondary from estrogen dominance or a gallbladder liver problem. So you can create that video. I mean, you can watch that video that I created on that. Nutritional yeast is totally fine because that'll give you the B vitamins that you need. Type 1 diabetics need to do this. It'll take the stress off the pancreas and really help them stabilize the blood sugars. The only thing you have to do is you have to make sure your greens are very high. So in this eating plan, where I get all my vitamins and minerals is from the greens. My salads are huge, okay? So I'm going a lot of green vegetable, but I eat the fiber. I don't just juice everything, okay? Because I want the nutrients and I want some of the fiber in there. Okay, so these are coming through. Okay, so says Dr. Greg doesn't agree with subtracting fiber from the carbs. He says carbs are carbs. Well, here's the thing. You don't want to just look at the net carb. You want to see if there's actual sugars in there, and you want to use judgment. Obviously, if it's a vegetable, you don't really have to worry about it too much. If it's some box food, you do. So there are certain things that you know that are high glycemic. Well, just you're going to have to avoid them. Make sure that your xylitol, that's a good point, Lynn, is from birch bark, not from corn. Yeah. Wheatgrass juice powder is totally fine to consume because it's there's not a lot of sugar in that, and it's a tremendous amount of concentrated green juice that will give you a lot of nutrition. Almond butter is good. Unsweetened peanut butter is good, unless you have allergies. Now, someone says, will I ever be able to eat fruit again? Yeah, you will. Once you lose the weight, then you can stick in the fruits more as a maintenance, because you're going to be able to get away with more carbohydrate the more you do this, because you're basically fixing your pancreas. You're fixing your liver when you do this, because you're taking all the stressor off. The pancreas has been working so hard, so it starts to come back and it recover. It's a wonderful thing to do for your body. Kombucha tea, you want to get the one with 2 grams of sugar, and make sure that you don't have any more than that, because some of them have a lot more sugar. So you just have to look at labels. Cruciferous vegetables, if you can't do those, that's fine. Do spinach. Do leafy greens. It's totally fine. Let me just grab this right here. Now, there's 4 more minutes, and someone mentioned ketosis for polycystic ovarian syndrome. Absolutely, it would be the thing that I think will help you more than anything. Boy, you guys ask a lot of questions. Just flowing through so fast. How do you gain muscle on ketosis? Well, you're gonna get leaner. You're gonna burn fat. You don't need a lot of protein to build muscle. You need exercise, but you need to keep the insulin low, so you don't get that conversion to the fatty tissue. I have lots of people who lost tremendous amount of weight doing this, and they were very stubborn before, and this is what they really needed. You have to take it one step further. Now, I want to send everyone a link to something that I want to ask you. A lot of you are on my email list. A lot of you watch my videos, and you know that I give a lot of free stuff out, and I hope you appreciate that. What I'm going to ask from you in exchange tonight is to give me an unbiased review. Okay, that's all I want to exchange. I want a review. So I'm going to send you a link, and I'll try to email it too, to this review site. And you just type in a review. Tell me what your experience with my information, what you think about me, whatever, and be honest, and say whatever you want to say. But then you'll get an email probably tomorrow morning that will tell you to cut and paste that review onto either Google Plus or another site. And I would really appreciate that if you would do that for me. I'm going to continue to give you guys a lot of good content, but in exchange, I would really appreciate it if you can give me a review. So I sent you the link, and you can do that after we're done. So I'm going to thank you in advance for that. Now, someone just asked me a question. I got to go back. I just quickly saw that. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Neuropathy. Peripheral neuropathy is purely high sugar in the blood. So when you do this eating plan, your sugars will be so much better. It'll take the pressure off the destruction of the myelin sheath, and it will greatly improve the peripheral neuropathy. But you're going to have to add nutritional yeast to add those B vitamins to be able to feed the deficiencies that you're creating by all this insulin. Okay. Someone said, but I can't buy and afford everything in the world. Okay. Well, here's the thing. You don't have to spend a lot of money on a ketosis diet. You can make these keto bonds in bulk. You're not eating as much food. You can make the most incredible ice cream. I'm going to create some videos on how to make some ice cream that is totally legal, and you can do that. And it's not expensive. You make a whole bunch and you freeze it. So there is a way to do it. Okay, how many carbs can I have per day? I would say no more than 50 carbs a day. Okay, but don't worry about salads. You're not going to get a lot of carbs from that. But even I'm 50 and my skin keeps getting better and better the more I do this. I do take a lot of fat soluble vitamins, and I use the gallbladder formula to emulsify. So I'm constantly pushing fats into my system, and I don't have like dry skin or anything like that. Okay, so if you didn't get the email that I sent to everyone, I'll send it one more time. But I'll just send it to your email. Right now, actually. It should be going right now. So if you don't get an email, I'll send it to you. And if you still don't get an email, do me a favor. Tomorrow, go to my Google Plus page and do a review on Google Plus. I would appreciate that very much. So I know I want to keep it to 1 hour. I do these monthly. I'm going to be asking for more ideas to talk about, but I hope you got some tips. I'll be doing more seminars. I really appreciate the attention and all the questions. And yes, I will send you that recipe, George, for ice cream and the keto bombs. So I'm going to be checking out now. So I want to thank you guys for coming on, and thank you, Judy, for being there to be someone I can relay stuff back and forth. This video will be recorded on my YouTube channel, which is, you could find that by typing in Dr. Berg. And I know you guys are just downloading all these questions. I'm not going to be able to get to all of them, but I want to thank you guys and have a great evening. Okay? See you next time.